I'm very, very moved by this. Thank you, Steve, so much for your work and for NACLA's work. I feel like throwing all this away, my speech, and just ad-libbing, but I'll try to stick to more or less what I was going to say. North American Congress on Latin America. And just those words, it's sort of like, it was like somebody cooked them up for me. You know, I'm a Norteamericano and I'm a Latinoamericano. And as to Congress, you know, well, I thought there might as well be some North American Congress on our side. But this is falling apart. Okay. But I think it's great because it is related to Congress as its archaic sense of gathering together, right? And the sense of love, in fact, the love affair, the Congress, you know. This man has had Congress with that woman, that sort of thing, you know. And I think that's the central, one of the central cores of my life, which is this relationship, this tense relationship between Latin America and North America. And the fact that I've spent a great part of my life trying to figure out what that relationship is and how it can be productive and fertile instead of being hostile and destructive. So Steve has helped me because he's already sort of presented my life as an Argentine child who came to the United States and then had to leave because of McCarthyism. So you could say that having fallen in love with America, having fallen in love with the United States, I fell in love with what was best in the US, and simultaneously, I became a victim of what was worst, right? And this tension was exacerbated when I settled in Chile in 1954, where I fell in love with the land and the language and with one woman in particular who's my wife now, where I also became increasingly aware. My father was an old lefty, so I was aware of it, but I became increasingly aware of the imperial presence in the United States, what it did to Chile and what it did to the rest of Latin America. What that imperial power systematically misdeveloped and controlled our resources and our land and our policies. Just a little excursus here. Oh, no, wait, I'll get to that. So, the fact that I continued in love with many North American history and culture and literature and the English language, in fact, which I continue, to use, didn't preclude my growth in militancy and revolutionary fervor. And I finally ended up going in 1968 to Berkeley, California. I went there as a research scholar. And it was as Wordsworth would say, it was a joy to be alive at that time, the momentous moment in history. And what I most loved about going there was the confirmation that the generation I had left behind in the US, which is the generation that created NACLA, in fact, had evolved in a similar direction, in a direction of rebellion, in a direction of joy in the rebellion. And I can't recall being aware of NACLA's existence there, though I know that they were sort of, the NACListas were somewhere in Berkeley. And then when I came to New York, I went up to Columbia, which was being occupied, and I sort of shouted with all of them. So I probably passed Amsterdam Avenue where they were at that point. But the point was, when I was in New York as a child, between 10 and 12, I was at 468 Riverside Drive. So I was really just like a few blocks from the 475. So it's been a tangential relationship. It's as if NACLA kept on saying, hey, Ariel, here I am, and I kept on going by because I didn't quite realize what it was. But when I went back to Chile in 1969, things changed. Things changed because I can pinpoint the moment when I saw the first NACLA newsletter. And it was brought by somebody, I think his name was Mike. Because, Chile in 1970 was filling up with gringos from the CIA, right? Los gringos de la CIA. But there was also a group of gringos solidarios. By the way, all of these were as disheveled one as the others because the gringos de la CIA were disguised as gringos solidarios. So you couldn't quite tell who was what. But I'm sure that Mike, who showed me this copy of the NACLA report, 50 cents, it said at the top, 50 cents, boy, we could do with those 50 cents, right? For the fund. And he showed me this, and I said, wow. So he showed me this, and it had, this is what it had. I mean, I don't remember what it had then, but I do remember one thing that it had. The Popular Unity Government, the whole program was translated into English. This was the first time that people in the States could access our government's Popular Unity, our policies, our program, the program that Allende set into motion, that the people of Chile voted for. And then there was also an article by Elizabeth Farnsworth. There was also a critique by the Mir of the Popular Unity Government. And there was a wonderful interview by Saul Landau, who I had already met when he was filming with Raul Ruiz, of all people, and had gone to interview Allende. So that was the first issue, and there I realized that NACLA existed. NACLA. I thought, this is strange. Once again, I think Congress in Latin America, what does that mean, But I was very glad to see that here was this Chileno who I was, who knew that there were people in United States who were willing to tell Americans about our revolution, what we were trying to do. And I think that this was a very, very important thing because it gave me a sense of reconciliation in some sense, to know that NACLA, along with many other initiatives, was part of what I would call the other America. Michael Harrington spoke about the other America as the poor in America, right? But I thought of the other America as, I always thought of America as being at least two Americas. There are many more than two Americas, but there are at least two Americas, right? And, in Latin America, they keep on speaking about los gringos as if they were some monolithic, monster. And here was NACLA working in a very, very different way. And this was proof that the interventions were not only of Nixon and Kissinger, of Anaconda and ITT. There were other interventions in our reality. They were intellectual interventions. They were solidarity interventions. They were thoughtful interventions, They were the better angels of the intervention in the United States. They were the people who were coming to us saying, we are with you in your revolution and we will defend your revolution. And informing the American public about that. And that was very important when you had, the ITT papers, when you had the sense that there was this conspiracy against Chile. There was this other sort of conspiracy of angels, so the A stood for angels, NACLA angels, in that sense. It was a resource for Americans to understand Chile and the dilemmas of the rest of Latin America. So these were allies from the North. And the North didn't send us only conspirators and saboteurs. And it's very important, to know that you're not alone in that sense. Of course, personally, it endeavored to reconcile in my person the fact of my own fractured existence between these two continents, these two languages. Now, the next newsletter from NACLA, I can't remember it as such, but my memory has been refreshed by looking at it, began with the words in Spanish, Chile es donde queman las papas. Now, what's funny about this phrase is that it really means Chile is where things happen, good things happen. In fact, they misquoted it because Chile es donde queman las papas mean Chile is a place where you burn potatoes. Now, if you really wanted to quote it right, you have to Chile es donde las papas queman, which is very different, meaning the potatoes are burning in your head. It's a hot potato. That's what it really meant, right? But NACLA mistranslated it, which is great. That's no problem at all. It's because part of a mistranslation is good for a joke, which is always good. We need some humor on the left. We really do. Now, not only the papas, the potatoes, not only events were burning in Chile, because soon enough it was going to be the presidential palace that was going to be burning, right? La Moneda was going to be burning, and books were being burnt, and bodies were being burnt, and a country was under fire, and the revolution had gone up in flames, right? When that other fire began to consume us, and by the way, it's not just our fire, it's a fire which consumes so much of Latin America, so many lands and so many pueblos. NACLA was also there. And here's a quote. Here's a quote from their first issue after the coup. It says, to our friends, as individuals and as NACLA staff members, we have experienced the recent coup in Chile as one of the most painful events of our lives. I can't tell you, but listen to what they're saying. Painful events of our lives. NACLA was saying that this was an event in your lives. It wasn't happening to Chile. It was happening to us, meaning it was happening here. The coup was happening here. You just have to think about who I don't know, did you write that, Michael? I don't know who wrote it, but you know, what I mean is the sentiment behind that was the sense of somos chilenos, right? And that is not something which was thought up in an ideological sort of like a little room, you know, of ideology. It was thought from the heart, right? And then it goes on. It says, we feel this blow against the Chilean people and against the estimated 15,000 Latin American exiles living in Chile. Look at how they immediately spoke, you immediately spoke, not only about the Chileans, you spoke about the Latin American dimension of this, because of course, Chile had been the place where thousands and thousands of Latin Americans went to seek refuge and to help the revolution come along, right? And I met many of them, of course. I can tell you lots of stories about them. Living in Chile, directly and personally is a blow against us all. We are saddened by the brutality of the coup, heartened by the resistance, and more committed than ever to continue our work. And then farther down, they spoke about the fact that they were going to present, we will have many opportunities to present the other side of the picture. In other words, they already knew that there was this enormous machine working, right? And that NACLA was going to be there to present the other side of the picture. I think that is very, very central to what NACLA does. They present the other side of the picture. The other side. When you think about that, you think the picture has two sides, and the one belongs to these underprivileged and forgotten and neglected people. You know. Now, my relationship with NACLA became, of course, much more intense when I came here in 1980 after 7 years of exile in Europe, and I could speak at length about how important NACLA is and about the combination of scholarship and engagement, and particularly the fact that NACLA, because NACLA is part of our history, and we will also say, como Latinoamericanos, as Latin Americans, we can also say, you belong to us, right? In other words, and one of the important things I think that NACLA has done in the thinking community, the intellectual community, it has brought up a series of themes and problems and interests and movements which Latin Americans are aware of, but we don't fully engage in all the time. Exile has changed that somewhat. You know, we become more globalized in that sense. But when you think about these issues on gender, on sex discrimination, on the movement of indigenous peoples, you know, when you think about the multipolar, that issue on that, the issue on migration in the United States, the issue on migratory, right? I mean, we were only marginally exploring some of these. So there's a back and forth, which I think is the true dialogue of the Americas, you know? And it's now called the Report on the Americas, and I love that. I love the fact that it's considered to be one. Now, in the middle of all of that, as a writer, what I most care about is, I think, and I think it's been proven here, what it really interests me personally, and I think is what moves most of the NACListas and those who help NACLA, is the focus on the ordinary, I would say the everyday people of Latin America, and North America as well, you know, as the true protagonist of history. So I'm very moved by this award, and what I want to do is, as a way of returning the award is to give you, I mean, accepting it, is to tell you a little story, because I'm basically a storyteller. I mean, this is. And when I just went down to Chile a year and a half ago to do the film that Stephen was talking about, and which is going to open the Gala Benefit of Human Rights Watch on June 12th. So, and then it'll be shown again on June 13th, and then we're going to show another special series of films on June 14th. So I'll be back in New York for that. There's a lot that's cut out of that film. And one of the things that we did is, one day I'm a member of a group called Libro Libre, meaning we get books, we buy books, or we give books, and then we leave them in poblaciones, in places that don't have these books. So because I was going to do this anyway, I mean, I did nothing that I wouldn't have done anyway. The filmmakers accompanied me along, and we gave all these books out to these little kids, and they were so hungry, and everyone was hungry. Everybody wanted these books, and I was just giving out books all the time. And at the end of the ceremony of getting this little plaza in Pudahuel, very, very very impoverished area and very full of dignity. One of the women came up to me and said, I'd like you to come and meet my father. He's over there on that bench, and he's a bit old, so he can't come over to see you, but he would like to meet you. And because he had heard something about the fact that I had worked with Allende or something of the sort. So I went over and I sat down next to him. And he told me the following story. And that's the story with which I'm going to end. And he said that in 1970, of course, before 1970, he had a picture of Salvador Allende, a picture up on his wall. And when Allende had come, one of the things that Allende had done is he had created, for the Corvi, with the Corporación de la Vivienda, he had created a program whereby lots of very poor people could construct and build their own houses. In other words, they were able to do this. And hundreds of thousands of houses were done. And he said, and I hurried up because I knew this couldn't last, he said. You know, I mean, he'd been through a lot. He was an old man. He'd seen a lot of massacres. He'd seen a lot of repression. He said, I wanted to make sure I had my house before it was over. I mean, you know, the poor are very practical. They've got to be or they wouldn't survive. And he said, and I had him, and then on that house, when we finished the wall, I grabbed the photo of Allende, and I took it from the old part of the house, because it was a little shack part. I put it in the new part of the house there. So he put it there. And he said then that the coup had come, and that a few days after the coup, he had watched how they had, the military had raided a house just in front of his house in Pudahuel there, and carted everybody out and beat up the people, etc. So he had grabbed this portrait of Allende. He had undone the walls that he had done. He was a carpenter. And he had put the portrait inside the wall and then sealed it up with nails, okay? And there it had been for 17 and a half years. When 1990 came, he did not take it out. He only took it out when Pinochet was taken prisoner in London, because then Pinochet could do nothing to him. That's the importance of destroying impunity. That's the importance of making sure that we have justice from around the world. That's the importance of saying wherever a crime against humanity has been committed, if it's against humanity, anywhere where humanity is, in other words, all over the globe, we have the right to arrest that person and put them on trial in the name of the victims. Unless, of course, the people in the country themselves have the possibility of doing it. The first people who should do it are the people back home. But if they can't do it for different reasons, somebody else has got to do it. And in fact, you know, that's sort of how things went. I can go on with that. But I just wanted to mention that because somehow I think that is the story of NACLA. In other words, I think that man, in some sense, is telling us something very, very vital about resistance and about memory and about justice and about not giving up. And think of the following. If he could do that and keep that little retrato, that photograph there of Allende, in between the walls, then how is it not possible for us here, where nobody's going to come into our homes, at least not yet, you know, to come and cart us away because we have the photograph of anybody? How is it not possible for us to do even more? And I think that's what NACLA has been doing. It's been taking the stories that are hidden behind those walls and been showing them and making them come forward. So I could not be more honored by the fact that you even thought about me. You know, I mean, I'm just a guy who writes. That's all I really do. I couldn't have done anything else, or as Bishop Tutu say, anything else would have tasted like ashes. So thank you very, very much. I hope it was perfect.
It was perfect. Here, let me take this microphone.
Thank you so much, Ariel. What an honor.